with I&I programs, which is one reason through the process that we hired WHKS. And he has a presentation for you tonight to give you a little broader background of everything that we'll be doing as part of this project, their involvement, city's involvement, and how that's all going to work together.
Thanks, Stephen. Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thanks for having me. I guess first off, one of our other staff members, our project manager of the project, was unable to make it tonight. She was unable to make it due to road conditions, so I guess I'm the crazy person that's out driving around. But actually, I was down in our Mason City office today working, so I was planning on just driving through here. I live in Rochester, so...
You going to Rochester after this?
Yeah, I'm going to Rochester after this, so back home, so you know, the roads weren't they were okay, so, but...
If you lived in Austin, you'd be home by now.
Exactly, there you go. So Stephen keeps telling me I need to start cheering for the Packers for basketball, so with that, just a little bit about us. So I'm actually in our Rochester office. Our water and wastewater group is headquartered in Rochester, and we have 5 offices, and we serve all our water and wastewater clients out of Rochester. And then Angie Coles is our project manager. I'm the project principal. Angie and I have worked with over 30 Iowa and Minnesota communities with I&I reduction projects. So enough on the background. So here's what we want to talk about tonight. So, you know, why are we doing a sump pump program? So we really want to get into some of the details, as Stephen mentioned. You know, some of the higher, items he's talked about. We want to dig into some more of the minutia, talk about some of the steps. Also, as a city council, as a mayor, you're going to get questioned on this. You know, why are we doing this? What's the benefit to the city? So we want to talk about some of those things. And then also, this is one part of an overall long-range I&I plan. You've implemented, the first phase of what is intended to be a 6-year plan. So I just want to touch a little bit on what those other items are. So just to start out, what is I&I? What's that acronym? So I&I stands for inflow and infiltration. So what you have up there is a graphic, and what it shows are the blue pipes are stormwater. So what we want to have happen is during a rain event, we want what I call clear water. So think rainwater, groundwater, etc. We want that flowing to the river. We want to keep that out of the sanitary sewer system. And our gray water we want going to our wastewater plant. So basically, in a nutshell, inflow and infiltration is clear water when it gets into our sanitary sewer system. When it gets into the sanitary sewer system, it robs the capacity of not only our pipes, but also our wastewater treatment plant, our lift stations, and it causes, the main, negative is it causes, basement backups, items like that. Okay, so where does I&I come from? So one of the big things is it comes from the private sector. So when we say private sector, we mean the house. So it could come from roof drains, sump pumps, basically things around your house that are connected to your sewer service. Okay. In addition to that, other things just shown on here, we have the pipes itself. A lot of the city of Austin, you have older clay pipes. They leak, they crack. So you have water infiltrating, think groundwater there, leaking into your pipes. You also have leaky manholes and a variety of other things. So what you're going to tackle over the next 6 years is you're going to tackle how do we cost effectively remove these items. And at some point you're going to say it's not cost effective to remove these. We're going to let them be, but we're going to pick the cheapest items, the lowest hanging fruit, and then some of the stuff we're just going to plan to build bigger plants, lift stations, etc. Okay, just a little bit more. What is inflow and infiltration, or what are your numbers, so to speak? So maybe first off on the bottom, so it says baseline. So this is actually not your flows. This is a representation. It actually happens to be hayfields during a rain event in 2008. So that baseline, you can see that the red line, it's going up and down on a day. So think about that. People get up in the morning, 6 a.m., start taking showers, flow starts going up, kind of goes down in the middle of the day, back up the end of the day, etc. Well, then there you see the inflow. So that was over about a 6-hour period, then it spikes up. So again, inflow is more cross connections, water flowing right into the sewer, manholes, sump pumps, etc. And then over several days, where it's still high, the infiltration, that's more leaking pipes, etc. So then over, several weeks, this will actually, the flows will actually go back down to normal. So what are Austin's numbers? So up on the top there, average dry weather flow. Okay, what's dry weather flow? Think that's your 30 driest days. So usually that's July. Sometimes it's also January. So it's when you don't have a lot of rain. So your average flow is 2.6 million gallons per day. That's your driest 30 days. Your wettest 30 days, oftentimes April, May, sometimes June. Last couple of years it's been September, we've had some big rains. Your average wet weather flow is 6.3 million gallons per day. And then your peak instantaneous, what's the most? You've been at 19.8 MGD. So, that's 760%. Where do we want you to be? Where does the MPCA want you to be? Generally at about a 3-to-1 ratio. So anything above a 3-to-1 is considered excessive I&I, and typically then you try to remove that. You try to get that out of your system because it's really not cost effective to build a wastewater plant, pipes, lift stations, big enough to handle all this. So we want to get this I&I out, but we want to get it out cost effectively. Okay, I mentioned bang for your buck. So what are your cheaper things to do? Sump pumps. They're the cheapest thing to do. Why are they cheap? Because typically the fix, if someone has a sump pump in their basement and it's piped into the sewer, we need to get it piped out into the yard. Oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes that's $50, $100, $150 worth of plumbing, and that problem is fixed. Think of what you can do, as Stephen was talking about street projects, replacing sewers, etc. Extremely expensive. So as we move down there, sump pumps, next thing, bang for buck, smoke and dye testing. So that's where we blow smoke into the sewer system, and wherever smoke comes out, that means water's coming in. So again, working your way down, manhole repairs, etc., all the way down to the bottom. The most expensive is, we'll leave the I&I in there, we'll just build a new wastewater plant. So really what we're trying to do is we're trying to pick these cheaper items, and then oftentimes we're trying to do a mix of public sector, think the items in your road, versus the private sector, which would be your individual homes or businesses. Okay, so this is City of Rochester after the 2008 flooding events in Rochester. They did a large study kind of evaluating. So their city council was tasked their public works staff with, okay, should we be spending money on the private sector or having residents spend money versus the public sector? So there, on the pie chart on the left was, of their I&I, about 66% of it was coming from the public sector, about 34% from the private. But the cost to remove, 93% of that, the dollars were actually in the public. So again, it's one of the reasons why we put sump pumps up there on top is it's really your most cost effective, and it's a lot cheaper to address your private sector than it is your public sector. Not that you're not going to address your public sector, you're really going to address them both. But again, just trying to illustrate the point, because one of the things that some cities shy away from is they don't want to address the private sector. And as we're going to talk about tonight, how you can do that in a constructive, positive way. By the way, feel free to interrupt, ask questions. Otherwise, I'm going to keep going here. Stephen said Mary wants me to keep her moving, so. Okay, why sump pump programs? Just now we're going to get some numbers. So, if you have a sump pump in your basement, they typically pump, if you go to Menards or Fleet Farm, your average sump pump's going to pump between 20 and 100 gallons per minute apiece. Okay? A normal 8-inch sewer, that's a normal sewer in the neighborhood, can carry about 350 gallons per minute. So it doesn't take many sump pumps to start backing up sewers and robbing capacity. So literally, as few as 4 pumps. You put 4 pumps in one neighborhood and you can potentially take all the capacity out of that sewer system. Okay? So it does not take a lot of sump pumps to really add up and cause problems. Okay, so what do we really expect? So northern Iowa, southern Minnesota, typically 5 to 10%. That's really what we've seen. So Angie took all our sump pump inspections over the last, I think it was 8 years. We've done 17,000 of them, and I think it's like 8-point-some% was the average. 8% of your sump pumps, or in this case, the hypothetical example is 5%, is a really big number. Okay, we don't know if we're going to find that in Austin, but it's a big number, and again, bang for your buck, it's really a lot more effective to take it out before it gets into your sewer system. And there's just the math there. It really comes back down to, just in the southeast sector alone, which we're going to be addressing this summer, potentially, that's almost 10% of that peak number we saw, that we showed earlier. Okay? Some more items here, just some costs, why sump pump programs are typically the most cost effective. So that first one, CIPP, that stands for Cured in Place Pipe. So that's where you line a sanitary sewer to restore that. That costs about $25,000 a block to do that. Upsizing sewer costs about $40,000 a block. So what you're going to do this year is about 3 blocks worth of sewer cost-wise. So again, just want to really emphasize that, particularly if the public questions you. Why are you doing this? Why are you coming into my basement? Why are you hassling me to fix my sump pump? It's really because you're being good stewards of your sewer dollars. Duluth, Minnesota, they probably have one of the more comprehensive studies on this. It's about $4 a gallon to treat it. It's about $1 a gallon to remove it. So again, let's get this water out of the sewer system before it goes in. Okay, some more talking points. So you have an I&I issue, evidenced by that 900%. So this is why your staff reached out to us and contacted us. I&I, so the EPA puts out guidance documents. Typically, they tell you, 50-50 public versus private. What we're seeing more in southern Minnesota is it's more like 25-75, 75% being on that private side. So again, and then why are we trying to remove I&I? Reduce backups, protect health, control costs, etc. Okay, so how do you approach a sump pump program? So number one is get the information out. Let people know what you're doing, why you're doing it. So we're going to do that public meetings, public info, the ordinance revision, etc. And we're going to run through that here now real quickly. Okay, so one of the things, if the council, when we move forward with this, we are going to put a lot of information out there. We're going to put stuff on your website, we're going to have mailings, radio, TV, newspaper. We want people to understand why we're doing a sump pump program. Not only that, we want people to actually go into their basement and look at their sump pump, because most people have not. They don't really think about it. So what we want is we want people to go down there and realize, hey, my sump pump is connected to the sewer, and oftentimes people will fix it before we even do an inspection, and that's exactly what we want. We want people to be proactive and fix this themselves. Many times we'll be in a community and we'll show up and there'll be new piping in their basement, and they'll say, yeah, I saw your literature. I didn't realize what this caused or was causing. So that's really what we want, is get this information out so we can answer, why are you going to make me do this? Okay, so start off with, we do this through a letter. So there'll be a letter that'll go out to the southeast portion of town. We're going to break that up into sectors. Everybody will get a letter, individual, informing them about the program. Okay, in addition to that, where we work through your staff, we're going to have a public informational meeting. We're going to have a public informational meeting not only for the residents, but also we're going to have one for plumbers, and we're also going to have one for realtors. Because plumbers they need to understand, what to fix, what the city of Austin's ordinance are. Also realtors, because oftentimes they're the ones that are involved with selling houses, and one of the things we're going to want to do is have a point of sale. So going forward, that when someone sells their house, that they'll have a sump pump inspection as well. So we want to make sure the realtors understand that, and then this will just kind of take care of itself over time. After we get through the first initial sump pump inspections.
How about landlords?
Landlords are treated, rental properties are treated just like regular properties. One of the questions actually that came up from your city attorney is, have you had problems with landlords versus tenants in the past? We really have not. We've seen that most landlords are pretty vigilant in as far as getting their inspections. Okay, so one of the biggest challenges with this is, with sump pumps, is getting them scheduled. So you're hiring us because, and so we want to do them fast, we want to be efficient. So how we're going to do that is we're going to have all inspections are scheduled. You know, some other, communities have tried going, just knocking door to door, et cetera. We don't want to do that. We want them all scheduled ahead of time. And we want people to show up that have identification. We don't want people pretending to be sump pump inspectors. We don't want, any fraudulent activities, et cetera. So everything is scheduled, and we do that through a website or through a telephone. You can call. So how we're going to do this is the city's broken up into 6 sectors, and we're going to do the southeast sector this year. And we're going to break that up into 4 colors. So what we'll do is we'll just pick, don't know if we decided which one we're going to start with, but we'll just say hypothetically green. Everybody in the green area will get a notice, they'll get a PIN number, they'll go on to the website austinsump.com, or they can call the phone number and they will schedule an appointment at their convenience. Typically then we do scheduling between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. and then we'll periodically do weekends as well, so that basically, depending upon whether you work weekends or nights, you'll always be able to get a time to be able to schedule your inspection. So this is what it would typically look like. So you go online, you pick the day, and then you pick your time slot. So it's pretty fast, pretty convenient.
What if you don't have a sump pump?
Then you still need to schedule an appointment, but then your appointment goes really fast.
Okay, so you still would schedule it and you'll come to make sure I'm not lying?
That's exactly right. Yep, because
Got it.
Yeah, you gotta watch her.
I wouldn't even know what to do with one of them.
What?
It's supposed to work itself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have one.
I don't even know where mine are.
You have one?
I have 2, and we just built house a couple years ago, and I have no idea what the sump, they showed me once. They're somewhere, I never hear them, they never go on, that's what they do, right?
Yep, that's exactly right. So they go on when it rains typically, and, well, not everybody. Yeah, if you're in a dry area, but there's...
I mean, you hear them, right?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, no.
Did you have them in your old house,
Yeah.
Tom?
In a hurry.
Did you have them in your old house?
Did not.
So why'd they put them in the new house?
I think, Stephen, I bet we almost have.
Hydrostatic pressure.
Do we have to?
Can be.
You don't have to, but it's a good plan they're very expensive to put in after the fact. And
I think we had a choice and we said we wanted.
Planning to put them in.
That was a good idea to put them in.
Got it.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yep.
You have a hose you drag around the yard,
What?
you know where it discharges, and you see water flying out.
No, I never seen
You don't
that.
have any pipes hanging outside your house.
Uh-oh.
Having water.
I'm gonna come.
I think we're gonna make the first inspection at the mayor's house.
Goes in the sewer system.
Yeah, you're.
No, I have them, I mean, I've seen them, but I don't think they ever go on.
He's in a pretty sandy area, so
We
I
just
actually...
didn't have them before and we never had a problem, so why would you?
That's what I was just.
He has a cycle back through the house, that's what he uses for a shower.
I was wondering.
Shower.
See what you started?
Yeah, well, this is exactly the discussion we want. This is exactly the discussion.
So the letter will say you need to call if you don't have.
Yes, exactly, yep.
I'm sure you get
Got it.
a few that just are hard to get a hold of and just don't apply.
Wish I had
What do you do
all the
about
water.
that?
Well, that's probably the key item here is that we're proposing that you will put a surcharge in your ordinance
I think come to my house,
and that you will pay an additional $100 a month if you do not conduct an inspection, or if you have a sump pump that's not collected, you will have a $100 a month go on your bill.
That'll make someone stand up. Yeah.
And our goal, and your staff's goal, is not to collect the $100. That's not the goal. The goal is to get the sump pump out of the system.
And they'll just do it.
Yep. So, why $100? $100 is something that gets people's attention. Also, it's a surcharge. It's not a municipal infraction. The reason being is this has been tried in Minnesota. It's gone to the Supreme Court, that cities can do surcharges. Because basically what you're saying is if you have your sump pump connected to the system, you can elect to pay a surcharge. You can elect to pay the $100 a month, because what you're basically saying is, I'm willing to pay extra for you to transport and carry all that extra water to in the system. And we can very easily back that number up.
That'll work.
Because you guys see Stephen's sewer budget. Sewer items are not cheap. They're millions of dollars, you know. So by building new plants costs a lot of money, so that number's very easy to justify.
And there are some issues in southeast.
Yep, that's why
Along
we're starting there.
whatever road that is.
We had a sump pump on every door there.
Damage.
Yeah, the, down by Ellis.
Yes,
Yep.
exactly.
Let's start with the.
Okay, so how do we do an actual inspection? So number one, we schedule them for 15 minutes, okay? Oftentimes they're even less. And part of this is we want to also educate people, so when we're in there, number one, adult must be present, okay? So no children, if adult's not there, we'll come back. So what we're looking at the sump pumps, we're also looking at beaver drains. You know, basically, if you've seen them around the inside of your basement, like around the inside wall that go to your floor drain, those are also not allowed or will not be allowed on your ordinance. We're also looking at your roof drains and your site grading.
They'll be allowed, they just can't go in the sewer.
That's correct. I'm sorry. Thank you for the correction. Yeah, beaver drains are allowed, but not beaver drains that go into the sewer system, correct. And then also, we'll also look at your roof drains and your site grading. So oftentimes, you know, when homes get built, they're graded around the house, but over time it settles, and sometimes people are creating their own problems by the drainage around their house is actually flowing into their basement. So we take a look at that and we try to advise people. This may be something you might want to look at, okay? Then when we're done, so this is all done on a tablet, so our inspector has a tablet, and then when we're done, the homeowner or the occupant, if it's a tenant, signs it, the inspector signs it, and if there's a violation, we give them the notice of violation right then and there, and we give them instruction diagrams on how to fix it, and then what the time limits are for correcting it as well. So we try to handle that all in that 15 minutes. Okay, so this is what the form looks at. It's a little hard to read, but basically it's a bunch of check boxes that we go through and we sign it when we're done. That way there's no question, well, the inspector told me this or the homeowner said that. Nope, it's all real clear. And then our inspectors, they upload that off of their tablet. Every Friday then that goes to our engineers. We check that and then we send that to Stephen and the staff, and then ultimately for the violations it'll go to Austin Municipal Utilities for billing purposes. Okay, mentioned earlier, we'll always be identified. So here about 7-8 years ago in Rochester, somebody did actually try to pretend to be a sump pump inspector, showed up at someone's door. It happened to be the home they picked was a retired building inspector for the city of Rochester. And that person had read everything and knew something was up, so called the police and shut the door. So everybody will be identified. They'll have name badges on, they'll wear a hat, and they'll have a shirt that'll say WHKS on them. So again, we don't want people going door to door. You know, we don't need any nonsense or anything else coming out of this program. Okay, some examples. So on the left, that's a pretty normal looking sump pump. And the pipe comes out, and then it goes to the outside. On the right is one with a flex hose, and that one happened to be into the sink that was next door. So all your sump pumps have to be rigid piped to the exterior. So again, here's one on the left. There's a proper one, and then on the right there's an improper one. Now the hose was actually going outside. But outside the picture, what the resident told us was, well, you know, I put it out there when it's not raining, but when it rains a lot, my yard gets wet, and that's kind of an inconvenience. So I pull the hose out of the wall and I stick it back into my sink, you know, when it's raining. So that's not what we want to have. So your ordinance,
Hard pipe.
hard pipe, that's correct. Yep.
Okay.
Basically, so you can't move that discharge around
Right.
depending on the time of the year. I had one person tell me one time, well, I only move around when it's really rainy a whole lot. Well, that's when we're seeing problems at the wastewater plant.
Right.
Okay, so on the left there, that's a beaver system. It's kind of hard to see there, but along the wall, and that's going into the sump pit, which is going outside. And then on the right there's a beaver system going right into the floor drain. Okay, a couple of other examples. So so someone actually put a beaver system in, and then it was running across their floor. They actually cut a hole in the floor and then run it right into their floor drain there. So again, just some examples of what we're looking for.
So like that last one, you look for, you can see the obvious patch in the concrete. There's telltale signs that you look for to see where these things are running.
Exactly, yep.
Is there any kind of a violation for the installer?
There,
That would have required a plumbing permit?
Yeah.
So we
No,
No,
some
one
pumps
does.
do not require a plumbing permit right now.
Because I mean, the contractor that put that in would have known they were doing the wrong thing.
they should, yes, yep.
So
And what,
is there a penalty for that, or?
well, most cities choose not to. They leave that as basically a civil matter between the property owner and the plumber that installed it. We're trying to stay out of that area. Just another example, this is a really close up of a pit in someone's basement, and they tied their floor drains into that as well. And we found this one, same thing, you can see the cut marks in the floor. So if we ever see some cut marks in the floor, we're gonna ask you about it, so. Okay, so then, so these diagrams are a little hard to read, but basically, we're gonna give people diagrams. So if they are improper, we're gonna give them instructions, as well as the plumbers, so they know how to fix that. And again, the whole goal is not to assess a $100 a month surcharge, it's really to get it corrected. And we really want people to, again, pay attention, look at this. And again, most people don't realize this when we do come into their basement. Okay, just want to reiterate, kind of repeat what we were just talking about. Again, talking points. Sump pumps are typically the most cost-effective method. So again, how do you keep your sewer bills down? Let's get the I&I, let's get that clear water out of the system. Number two, it's really painless, 15 minutes. Okay, we're in there, we're out. Okay, again, moving I&I mentioned save money. Also, it's a neighborly thing to do. Maybe you didn't have a basement backup in your neighborhood, but maybe your neighbor did. Maybe your neighbor's battling water problems, or, the sewer bill is more a part of their income than yours. Again, it's a community effort here. We're really trying to keep our sewer bills lower in the city of Austin.
So those water have to drain into their yard, they shouldn't be pushing it onto the neighbor's yard, correct?
That's correct.
Is that something you guys look at too?
We do, and oftentimes we'll get back with your staff then that, sometimes we create problems too. One of the things we've talked to, Stephen and Mitch about is when you take a sump pump out, that water's going somewhere, and, sometimes this results in we need to put tile lines and other things in neighborhoods as well. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about ordinance revisions. So again, these are just some of the key points. So again, it prohibits all the things we kind of talked about, sump pumps, beaver drains, etc. That second item we covered, must have a rigid discharge pipe to the exterior. Okay, no valves, no, we're going to put it into the sewer system when it's raining and outside when it's dry. One of the other things that we've adapted to over the years is word gets out about a program. So what we were finding is that we were showing up, we had one particular town where we were showing up and all the sump pumps were gone. And then someone told us that, well, people were pulling them out of their pit and sticking them in their closet. And then when the inspector came, well, I don't have a sump pump, just this empty pit. And then after we left, we put it back in. So if you have a sump pit and there's no pump in it, you still have to have it hard piped to the outside, or you have to fill your pit in. And what we find is, one of the things that I've been asked before is, well, geez, Bill, aren't you kind of naive? So, as soon as you leave, they're going to redo the plumbing. You know what? 99% of people are not. They're going to do the right thing. If they go ahead and put the expense of putting that hard, rigid pipe in there, they're going to leave that there. And really, that's, as we've done follow-up programs, that's really been what we've seen for most communities. People want to do the right thing, particularly if they understand that this is causing problems and it's raising your sewer bill. Fourth bullet down. So one of the things that came out of one of the Minnesota Supreme Court rulings is you have to give an alternative. So if someone says, I do not want the city of Austin or their representative coming into my basement looking for it, what can I do? Well, the answer is you can hire your own plumber. Okay, so if you want to hire your own plumber, you want to pay for that, and they complete the form, the city will allow that to happen. Okay, that's something that the Supreme Court again has said in order to make this stand up in court. Now, why would someone want to do that? not exactly sure. They have to pay for it. If they do it through the city of Austin, there's no direct expense. Obviously, sewer bills are paying for this, but there's no direct charge for doing this, okay? Third to the last bullet is we want to establish a timeline. So typically what we have is you have 30, once you get the notice, you have 30 days to schedule it, and then if you are in violation, you have 90 days to correct. And then if it's in the fall, if in October, we give people some leeway over the winter months. So if they have to do something in their yard, we'll wait until, we'll use some common sense there and give them until the spring. And the last bottom, surcharge, as I mentioned, the $100 a month for violations or no inspection. And then lastly is we'll be instituting a point of sale, meaning that once we do our inspections, how are we going to keep these going? Eventually, all homes turn over, so that'll be how you will address this 5, 10, 15 years down the road. Every time a house is sold, you'll have an inspection. And that's how, again, self-sustaining program. Okay, so just to summarize, so revise the ordinance, start the public info, schedule the meeting, begin inspections, and here's the timelines we're looking at. So tonight is your kickoff. So tomorrow, we'll keep working with your staff and start getting information out. What we're anticipating is the first reading of your ordinance revision will be March 19th. Second reading, if needed, April 2nd. And then we will mail invitations out to that first part of the meeting, the first part of April. Public informational meetings, you see that's plural because we'll have 3 meetings that night. We'll have a realtor meeting, we'll have a plumber meeting, we'll have a public meeting. And then we're intended that inspections will begin the first part of May. And then they'll wrap up. Realistically, they'll really be wrapping up more in the August time frame, but again, with re-inspections, you have that 90 days to correct it. It'll drag out till, October, November.
Hey, Bill?
Yes.
Just one adjustment to that. We're looking at bringing it back to work session on March 19th. Our first reading will be April 2nd, and then if needed, our second reading would be the second council meeting in April. So just a little bit different than that for those first couple things. We'll bring it back next work session for that ordinance review before we take it to council for the first reading. Okay.
Great, thank you, Stephen. Okay, I'm going to keep on going.
Be done?
Nope, not quite.
Okay.
I just
Good.
have one quick
Yes.
question. When you do the point of sale, so
Yes.
say it's 5 years from now and I sell my house, who would do the inspection then, the city, or do I have to hire someone to do it?
So what we discussed is that it'll be city staff will do that, but that number will be, right now, Stephen, how many buildings are there in town or sewer?
9,000.
They're 9,000. 9,000 is too much for city staff to handle, but if you're doing a couple hundred a year, that we think that's reasonable, or staff thinks that's reasonable, that city staff could handle that.
Okay.
And we probably won't start that until after the program is done. So 6 years from now is when that would kick in. And so we got a little bit of time to flush that out and determine, do we require the homeowner to have that plumber inspect it and provide us a certified letter, something, or is the city staff will work on that 5 years from now?
Okay, thank you.
Just check the cameras out. Yeah, flush it out. Flush it out.
Yeah.
Kick that can down the road.
Okay, what other items? So you're doing some other things besides sump pump inspections. So the other things you'll be doing, so on the private side, again, the building inspections. On the public side, though, we will be doing smoke and dye testing this summer, also manhole inspections, and then lastly, CCTV, which is closed circuit televising. So that actually will be going out to bid to hire a contractor to do televising of all the sewer lines in the southeast sector. Okay, I just want to touch real briefly what this is. So smoke testing is where basically you have a crew of 3 to 4 people. What you see on the ground there, that is a smoke blower. So that goes over the manhole. You light a smoke candle, and then you blow smoke into the sewer, and basically you walk the path. Every smoke candle goes about 1,000 feet, 500 feet each direction. You're looking for smoke coming out. So basically, if you see smoke coming out of the ground, water's going in, we note that, and that's a deficiency that we're going to correct. Okay? So when we're going to do this, when we're going to blow smoke into a neighborhood, then we make sure we're talking to the fire department, we're notifying again, because every time we do smoke testing, about a couple homes, we are gonna blow smoke into someone's basement because they have either broken plumbing in their basement or they have a dry trap. But what I tell people, you know what, it's a good thing we put that smoke into your basement, which is odorless, colorless, non-toxic, because that meant sewer gas has been going into your home all this time. So if you have smoke in your basement, that means sewer gas is leaking into your basement as well. So, yeah, but we always have one or two, and that's why we tell the fire department, because someone will call, hey, the smoke's coming out of my basement, I have a fire in my house. So that's why we're always making sure we're talking to them so they know where we're doing these.
I anticipate that we might have more than one or two. We get a lot of sewer gas smells. We get a lot, and that really leads to improper plumbing, dry traps. You know, people just haven't put water down their floor drain for an extended period of time. Some people don't even think of their shower in the basement that they never use. Well, there's a trap right there that could dry out, or on a windy day like we've had the last couple of days, water will get blown out of your trap, and then we start to have sewer gas smells and calls following windy days. So anticipate that you're gonna have more than one or two that have this smoke going into their house.
But the main thing for the smoke is the city's pipes.
Correct, yep, city's pipe, but so actually, ideally what happens, you see it coming out of everybody's vent on the top of their house. That's where it should come out. Anywhere else, streets, if we see it in the storm sewer, that's really what we're looking for.
Rain gutters.
Rain gutters.
If you see it coming out of their rain gutters, it means their gutters are connected into their sewer line.
So we find all sorts of interesting things in smoke testing, so.
Smoke ciders should be deployed.
Okay, next thing we'll also be doing is manhole inspecting. So we are going to open every manhole lid in the city, and we're going to look for deficiency. These are just happen to be some items we find. So that bottom left one, you can see it kind of looks like a little waterfall going in there. So that was Mason City, Iowa. That was leaking 75 gallons a minute. That was actually a broken water main that was 10 feet away from where they didn't know. So I had a council member ask me, said, Bill, how long have I been doing that? I said, well, city staff, last time that had been that manhole was 3 years ago. So it either broke yesterday or any time between yesterday and 3 years ago. So 75 gallons a minute. Now that's what I call the trophy leak. You don't find those very often, but every now and then you do. But you see these other things as well. You see manholes with the casting pushed off. You see other leaks going in, a variety of different things. So again, one of the things we're doing is we're building your database. So Mike and Mitch and Steven are going to have good data on your sewer system. And again, this is going to help build your CIP over the next several years. Okay, and then lastly, closed circuit televising. So as I mentioned, we are putting together plans and specifications to go out for bid for this service, and you're going to have all your pipes televised, and we're looking for things like you see in the pictures on the right side. And again, then we're going to build what we call a defect database, and then we're going to start prioritizing repairs for you to build into either with your street projects or standalone projects. And then oftentimes we're going to find more things that need to be repaired than you have budget for, so we're going to then spread this out over, as we work with Steven and staff, a reasonable time frame, be it 5, 10, 15 years.
So we televise annually different regions, or?
We televise just for street projects right now, or if we hear of a problem, but right now it's just televising for street projects.
So we'll redo all those then? Or do we?
Yeah, we're gonna do the entire southeast sector, yep.
So even if it's been there within the last couple of years?
Yeah, because this company that's coming in, they'll put a uniform grading schedule on everything. Our guys are just televising it, looking at it, they don't have any experience of ranking, well, this crack, how does this crack compare with this broken pipe? We televise the whole thing at once with a uniform company. They can put a uniform rating system on the entire southeast sector.
So basically, we're going to quantify every defect in your sewer system. Then we're going to rate it, and we're going to start knocking off from a 1 to 5, 5 being the worst. We're going to knock the 5s off, the 4s off, some of the 3s. We probably won't do any of the 2s or 1s. All right, that was a lot of stuff to go through.
Are you done?
Done.
Okay, we don't have any questions.
Wow.
I'm just kidding. Are there any questions? It's very interesting, really.
Who's doing the ordinance? Judy's got a question.
Well, yeah. Who does the ordinance?
We've been working with Steve Holby, And then we also met with Austin Utilities last Friday to talk about how they can incorporate that into their bills. So we're starting that process. WHKS went through our ordinance and made recommendations on where we can strengthen it. And we've taken that information, submitted to Oversee's office, so we'll bring that back at the next work session.
And that's basically the rough draft and then you...
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Anybody else? All right.
Well, thank you, Mayor, Council.
Thank you.
Look forward to it.
Thanks.
Very interesting.
Yeah, thanks, me too.